News. I'm Annie Bennett here with your morning news, where President Bill Clinton has recently been making the headlines. As you may recall, soon after his inauguration, Mr. President openly proclaimed about his belief in pro-choice. Even this morning we see protests about an individual rights. We'll have a reporter on that later. On a much more positive note, the poverty rate has been drastically dropping, and the people have begun giving the president credit for this accomplishment, despite the recent uproar of the discovery of his affair with the White House intern Monica Lewinsky. To cover the foreign situations, we have Kate on scene in Dayton, Ohio, outside the peace conference, which is being led by President Clinton himself. With the war raging on in Bosnia, Americans are desperate to know how will we as a country be involved. Mr. President hopes to answer this. Here's Kate.
I am here in Dayton, Ohio, where President Clinton has arranged a peace talk for participants to plan a signed peace known as Dayton Accords.
My fellow Americans, last week the warring fractions in Bosnia reached a peace agreement as a result to our efforts in Dayton, Ohio, and to the support of our European and Russian partners. Tonight, I want to speak to you about implementing the Bosnian peace agreement and why our values and interests as Americans require us to participate. Let me say that the outset of America's role will not be about fighting war. It'll be about helping the people of Bosnia to secure their own peace agreement. Our mission will be limited, focused, and under the command of an American general.
Clinton has been doing his best to maintain peace after Yugoslavia split apart. The U.S. has sent NATO allies to take military action by attacking Serbs in Bosnia to force negotiation. However, Clinton administration has put together his peace plan known as Dayton Accords, which will help Bosnia move through conflict to reconstruction. Clinton will now send 60,000 NATO troops to Bosnia enforcing this plan.
Thank you, Kate, for that insight as we look into this man's presidency. On the topic of plans being enacted, we have Lauren to give us some insight on Mr. President's achievements with his domestic policy. Over to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Annie. As President Bill Clinton's term is coming to an end, he will be leaving quite the legacy in terms of domestic policy, specifically his efforts on gun control. The biggest event that motivated these attempts would include the Columbine city bombing on April 19, 1995, and the Columbine shooting on April 20, 1999. Coming after the World Trade Center bombing in New York 2 years earlier, many people erroneously assumed Middle Eastern terrorists were behind the attack. Instead, it turned out to be the worst act of homegrown terrorism in the nation's history. Addressing the nation the evening of the Oklahoma City bombing, President Bill Clinton described the attack as an act of cowardice. He vowed the federal government would find the terrorists and that justice will be swift, certain, and severe. Clinton deployed a crisis management team led by the FBI to Oklahoma City to solve the crime, declared a state of emergency in Oklahoma City, and called for step-up precautions to protect other federal facilities. During his term, President Clinton also used the power of executive orders to implement gun control policies. On April 6, 1998, Clinton signed an order that permanently banned the importation of more than 50 types of semi-automatic assault weapons. As we're nearing the end of Clinton's presidency, the nation is curious to see how this policy will lay out. Back to you, Annie.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm sure there will be more soon on how people are reacting to gun control laws as we see where will this take America in the future. To cover the social and cultural side of his presidency, we have Leanna to talk about abortion and gay rights and people protesting on such things. Over to you, Leanna.
I'm here with your daily update on the hot social topics. Under Bill Clinton, many advocacy groups have risen. With Clinton being the first pro-choice president in 12 years, abortion has become a hot topic once again. He has now vetoed an abortion ban and repealed over 4 other anti-abortion policies. Clinton states,
"We respect the individual conscience of every American on the painful issue of abortion, but believe as a matter of law that this decision should be left to a woman, her conscience, her doctor, and her God. But abortion should not only be safe and legal, it should be rare."
The FDA has also begun researching and approving new contraceptives. The major groups on the pro-choice side are the National Abortion Rights Action League, or the NARAL, and Planned Parenthood. Their major opponent is the National Right to Life Committee, or the NRLC. Actually, here on the street beside me, we have the NARAL, as they have organized this Women's Right March. Can I ask, what are you doing here today?
Yeah, we're just out here today supporting our women of New York City, protesting the arrival of Pope John Paul II because he's pro-choice.
Thank you. Now, moving on to another hot topic, we have gay rights. Although Clinton has also harmed the community in smaller ways, he has really done a lot for this movement and really pushed equality and representation. He is the first to appoint any gay people to an administration post, but he didn't stop there. His administration now includes over 150 people who openly identified with the LGBT community. He continues to fight against discrimination and is advocating for healthcare. He has brought this issue into the more broad category of civil rights. This has brought up both excitement and horror in the public. Focus on the Family and the Family Research Council have not been so excited about this movement. The Human Rights Campaign, however, has become a huge supporter and carries this legacy farther.
Just 2 years after Clinton took office, we changed our mission and logo specifically to fight for LGBTQ equality. Having the support of the president and the law has made a huge difference for us.
Thank you. Now, back to Andy in the studio.
Thank you, Leanna, for that piece and going out and talking with all those people about those things. In America, I say to you today, where do you stand on these topics? Every individual must know where they stand, and we can't be wishy-washy about where we are right now, especially with where America is supposed to be headed in the next 20 years or so. Heading over to our economical overview of Mr. President's presidency, we have Gretchen to talk about his accomplishments, as well as an interview with a formerly impoverished individual. Here's Gretchen.
3 years ago, 10 million Americans were unemployed. The country faced record deficits, and poverty and welfare rolls were growing. Family incomes were losing ground to inflation, and jobs were being created at the slowest rate since the Great Depression. Today, America enjoys what may be the strongest economy ever. Unemployment is currently lower than it has ever been at a rate of just 4%. This is all thanks to President Clinton and the work he has put in for our economy. He has grown the Earned Income Tax Credit, helping lower-class working families with the issue of taxes. Clinton, alongside the Democrats in Congress, raised taxes for the top 1.2% of the American people, lowered them for 15 million low-income families, and offered tax breaks to 90% of small businesses. This was due to the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1993. The effects of Clinton's economic plan improved many American lives. Over 20 million new jobs were made, leading to not only a lower unemployment rate, but also a much lower poverty rate. Since 1993, when President Clinton was elected, 7.7 million people have come out of poverty. Here's Kate, who will share her experiences with poverty and how she has been able to overcome it in recent years.
In 1990, I was living in poverty, desperately just trying to provide for my child. Now I have a steady job and this beautiful house thanks to the opportunities President Clinton has presented.
Thank you, Kate. As we venture into this new century, let's remember what our president has said. We cannot build our own future without helping others to build theirs.
Thank you, Gretchen, for that interview with Miss Kate. President Bill Clinton had many great accomplishments with his domestic and foreign policy, as well as influencing the culture and the economics of our nation. Despite such great accomplishments, Mr. President's legacy has been marred by a handful of mistakes that will leave his name the way it is even today as we reflect on what he's done with his presidency. I'm Annie Bennett, and this was your Morning News.
Wait, I gotta hear from the depths.
Yours mostly focuses on poverty, right?
Yeah. I'm so happy. Watch me. I'm Kate's homeless kid.
How big should my southern accent should be? It's kind of tight.
Like under.
Focused and under the command of an American general. So says it's me, Bill Clinton.
Don't be wishy-washy.